My best friend sent my husband lingerie photos. Then I caught him looking at them. I really hope someone can convince me that I'm overreacting because right now it feels like my entire life has fallen apart. I'm 38, my husband is 38, and we've been married for 15 years. We have a teenage daughter, and like most couples who've spent that much time together, we've had our share of amazing moments and really difficult ones. Life is busy. Between work, parenting, and everything else, our intimate life isn't as frequent as it used to be. Still, we always make an effort to have time together at least once or twice a month. It's not perfect, but I thought we were okay. Then one Saturday changed everything. Our daughter was spending the night at a friend's house, so I thought it would finally be a chance for my husband and me to have some alone time. I spent about 20 minutes cleaning the kitchen before heading upstairs to our bedroom. The second I walked in, I froze. My husband was sitting on the bed, clearly touching himself while staring at something on his phone. The moment he noticed me, he hurriedly pulled up his pants, locked his phone, and acted like nothing had happened. But I'm not stupid. For the record, I'm not completely against self-pleasure. It does make me feel a little inadequate sometimes, especially because this isn't the first time I've caught him. But that wasn't even what upset me the most. I asked him what he had been looking at. He refused to tell me. Instead, he walked out of the room. I followed him through the house, demanding an answer until he finally gave in and showed me his phone. The image on the screen made my stomach drop. It was a photo of my best friend wearing lingerie. In that instant, my entire world shattered. The only explanation that made sense in my head was that they were having an affair. I completely lost it. I screamed. I cried. I honestly don't even remember everything I said. My husband started crying too. After things calmed down a little, he begged me to let him explain. Over and over, he apologized. He kept saying it was the stupidest mistake he'd ever made and swore it would never happen again. I told him it felt like cheating. He insisted he had never cheated physically or emotionally, but admitted he'd crossed a line that never should have been crossed. Then he gave me an explanation that somehow made everything even more confusing. According to him, he'd been texting my best friend because he wanted to surprise me with lingerie as a gift. That part wasn't completely unbelievable. They occasionally text each other, and I sometimes text her husband too, usually in group chats or about random things. He said that because my best friend and I have similar curvy body types, he asked if she'd be willing to recommend some lingerie that might suit me. According to him, she actually went to a store, tried on several sets herself, and sent him photos so he could see what might look good on me. That is the explanation. To me, it sounds absolutely insane. I cannot imagine, under any circumstances, sending photos of myself in lingerie to my best friend's husband. Ever. My husband showed me the entire conversation on his phone. The messages mostly matched his story. There wasn't obvious flirting. Conversation really did revolve around buying me lingerie. But something still didn't sit right. There were 3 photos. I only needed to see one. She was wearing an extremely revealing sheer lingerie set, and the pose didn't feel casual or innocent to me. It looked like she knew exactly how attractive she looked. Maybe someone else would see it differently. I couldn't. My husband immediately promised to block her number forever and swore he'd never make a decision like this again. He keeps saying he wasn't thinking and that he genuinely believed he was doing something nice for me. Part of me wants to believe him. Another part of me can't stop replaying that image in my head. Now I'm furious with both of them. I haven't spoken to my best friend since it happened. I haven't answered any of her texts. She obviously knows something is wrong because I've completely disappeared, but I honestly don't even know what I'd say if she called me. Did she genuinely think she was helping my husband buy me a gift? Or did she know exactly what she was doing? I honestly don't know anymore. Right now I feel betrayed, humiliated, and completely lost. So what would you do if you were in my position? Would you believe your spouse's explanation, or would this be a line you could never come back from? Update: I confronted my best friend, and my worst fear was true. A heartbreaking update to my previous post. Unfortunately, so many of you were right. My husband really was cheating on me. He's been staying somewhere else for the past week, and honestly, I've never felt this crushed in my life. In my original post, I explained how I caught him looking at photos of my best friend wearing lingerie on his phone. He insisted there was an innocent explanation, that she had only been helping him pick out lingerie for me because we have similar body types. I wanted so badly to believe him. But deep down, something didn't feel right. A lot of people suggested I send the photos to a group chat or expose them both immediately. I didn't do that. Instead, I decided to speak privately with my best friend's husband. Through our conversation, he confronted her himself. That's when everything finally came out. She admitted that she and my husband had been having an affair. According to her, they'd slept together several times over the past few months. She also confessed that the lingerie photos I found weren't the only ones. She had been sending him many more through Snapchat. She claimed they had both agreed a couple of months ago to end the affair and move on. At this point, I honestly don't care. Whether it ended 2 months ago or 2 days ago doesn't change what they chose to do. I never want to see her again. I never want to hear another excuse. And I never want either of them in my life again. My husband has apologized more times than I can count. He keeps telling me he'll never make a mistake like this again. But I don't think there's any coming back from this. The affair itself is devastating. The lies are what completely shattered me. For weeks, he looked me in the eyes, let me question my own instincts, and convinced me to doubt what I knew was happening. That betrayal hurts even more than the cheating. The hardest part now isn't deciding what happens between my husband and me. It's figuring out how to tell our teenage daughter. She doesn't know any of this yet. I still haven't found the right words to explain that the life she's always known is about to change forever. Right now, I'm just trying to take one day at a time. I honestly never imagined my first post would end like this. I, 30F, got pregnant even though my fiancé, 32M, and I agreed we would always be child-free. Now he wants to keep the baby, and I don't know how to tell him I don't. This pregnancy wasn't supposed to happen. My fiancé and I have always been on the same page about never having children. It wasn't some casual conversation either. When our relationship became serious, we spent hours talking about it. Every so often, we'd even revisit the topic just to make sure neither of us had changed our minds. For 2 years together and 3 months engaged, we never had a single pregnancy scare. I take birth control. He always uses condoms. We've been incredibly careful. Then, a few weeks ago, I started feeling off. First, I thought I was coming down with some kind of illness. I felt nauseous, sometimes I couldn't even look at food, I'd get random headaches, feel lightheaded, and I was exhausted all the time. When the symptoms wouldn't go away, I scheduled a doctor's appointment expecting to hear I had some kind of virus. Instead, they did a routine pregnancy test. A little while later, the doctor came back and calmly told me I was around 6 or 7 weeks pregnant. I actually laughed. No, that's impossible. I'm on birth control. We use condoms. There was no way. I asked them to test me again because I was convinced something had to be wrong. But they assured me the result was accurate. They couldn't do an ultrasound that day, so they scheduled another appointment and I walked out of that office completely numb. My birth control had somehow failed. Now I had to tell my fiancé. When I got home, I completely fell apart. I could barely get the words out through the crying. My nose was running, I was shaking, and I honestly felt like my entire world had collapsed. He reacted exactly how I expected at first. He wrapped me in a hug. He told me everything was going to be okay. For a few seconds, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. Then he said something that completely changed everything. We're going to make great parents. And I'll be with you every step of the way. Felt like the ground disappeared beneath me. I honestly don't know how to describe what happened in that moment. One of the biggest reasons our relationship worked was because we both wanted the exact same future. No kids. That had always been the plan. So hearing him talk about becoming parents completely blindsided me. I asked him what he meant. He smiled and said that maybe this was meant to happen. That considering everything we'd done to avoid pregnancy, the fact that I still conceived felt like some kind of miracle. I reminded him that we had both agreed we didn't want children. He acknowledged that. Then he quietly said, "That was before. Things are different now." Different? To me, nothing had changed. I never wanted children before. I don't want children now. I don't want to be pregnant. I don't want to give birth. I don't want to raise a child. I wanted him to come with me so I could get an abortion. I've never been pregnant before. I've never had an abortion before. I'm terrified. I don't know what the procedure will be like. I don't know how much it will hurt. I just know I don't want to go through it alone. I don't really have anyone else in my life that I trust enough to lean on during something this overwhelming. I needed him to be my support. Person holding my hand through one of the hardest moments of my life. Instead, he's imagining baby names while I'm trying to figure out how to tell him I don't want this pregnancy at all. Eventually, he gently told me I should get some sleep because I was obviously overwhelmed. He wasn't wrong. I was overwhelmed. Just not for the reason he thought. He thinks I'm scared because becoming a parent is happening unexpectedly. Truth is, I'm scared because I know with complete certainty that I don't want to become one. And I'm terrified that telling him I want an abortion is going to completely break his heart. Before anyone asks, I already tried to get my tubes tied years ago. I've seen 3 different doctors. Every single one refused to approve the surgery. Until now, birth control and condoms had always been enough. Apparently, this one time they weren't. Date I 30F accidentally got pregnant even though my fiancé 32M and I always agreed to be child-free. He wants to keep the baby. I don't. Yesterday, I finally had the conversation with my fiancé. Didn't go the way I hoped. I started by asking him one simple question. Do you actually want this baby, or were you only acting excited because you thought I wanted it? A lot of people suggested that maybe he was just trying to support me. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. He looked me in the eyes and told me he genuinely wanted this child. At that point, I knew there was no point avoiding the truth. So I ripped the bandage off. I told him I don't want this baby. I told him I was still planning to do what we'd always discussed if this ever happened: have an abortion. I explained that I wanted him beside me through it, but if he'd truly changed his mind about children, then I needed to know now. The look on his face changed instantly. He looked shocked. Then, honestly, a little angry. He asked me how I could possibly not be excited. He asked how I could even think about getting rid of our baby. I told him exactly what I'd been saying for years. I never wanted children. I still don't want children. Getting pregnant hasn't magically changed who I am. Instead of listening, he insisted I was overwhelmed and wasn't thinking clearly. That irritated me. Being emotional doesn't suddenly make me incapable of making rational decisions. I told him I'd already had an entire day to calm down and think carefully. This wasn't a panic reaction. This was exactly what I'd always planned to do if birth control ever failed. Then I told him something I think he wasn't expecting. If he truly wants children, I'm not going to stop him. It hurts more than I can describe because it means our relationship is over. But he won't be having that child with me. We're simply not compatible anymore. That's when I think he realized I was serious. He started talking faster, trying to convince me. He said we'd be great parents. We'd figure everything out. He'd work harder. We could make it work. But none of that addressed the one thing that mattered. I don't want to continue this pregnancy. I don't want children. The future we'd spent 2 years planning together never included becoming parents. The more he insisted, the more uncomfortable I became. Eventually, it turned into an argument. He refused to accept either option. Not us separating. Not me having an abortion. He never became physical or threatened me, but his repeated insistence that I couldn't end the pregnancy genuinely upset me. When I made my original post, I never believed he'd interfere with my birth control. That simply wasn't the kind of person I thought he was. But after watching how desperate he was, for the first time I started questioning everything. I asked him how long he'd wanted children. Had he changed his mind before I got pregnant? Or only afterward? He wouldn't answer. He just kept saying he didn't know. By then, I already knew the relationship was over. So I asked one final question. Was there anything else he wanted to tell me? He looked confused. I clarified. I asked whether anything had happened to our birth control, whether either method had been tampered with. The expression on his face is something I still can't explain. It looked like fear and anger all at once. He immediately called me crazy. Said I was being ridiculous. Then told me he couldn't talk to me when I was like this. After that, he walked out. As soon as he left, I started packing. I gathered all my important documents, my electronics, clothes, and everything essential. Then I left before he came back. I asked a friend if I could stay with her for a while. We're close, but not incredibly close, so I honestly expected her to say no. Instead, she immediately said yes. Once I got there, I told her everything. She told me I could stay as long as I needed. She also promised she'd be there with me when I have the abortion. That support meant more than I can put into words. Later that evening, my now ex-fiancé called after realizing I wasn't home. The first thing he asked was where I was. I simply said I was staying with a friend. I refused to tell him where. Then I told him the truth. I'm getting an abortion. I don't need his permission. I don't need his blessing. And I'm not going to stop him from having the family he wants. He just won't have it with me. I told him we're probably over because neither of us should have to sacrifice something this fundamental. Conversation completely broke both of us. We both cried. Eventually, he told me I could collect the rest of my belongings while he was at work. Then he quietly said, I think you'll regret getting rid of our child. I didn't argue. I just said, okay. Then I hung up. Today he sent a few texts asking how I'm doing. Later, he asked if I'd at least wait until we could see the ultrasound. I shut that idea down immediately. Since then, he hasn't really contacted me again. Tomorrow I'm planning to collect the rest of my things while he's at work. This isn't how I wanted any of this to end. I genuinely hoped his initial reaction was just panic. I hoped he was trying to comfort me. But it's clear now that somewhere along the way, the future he wanted changed. Mine didn't. So our relationship is over. I'll be having the abortion soon. After that, I have to figure out how to rebuild my life without the man I thought I'd spend forever with. I'm heartbroken. I'm grieving the loss of my partner and my best friend. But as painful as this is, it's still better than forcing myself into a future I never wanted. Final update. I moved out, got my belongings back, and I'm finally starting to move forward. Hi everyone. I wanted to give one last update since so many people have been checking in on me. The good news is that I've managed to get almost all of my things out of my ex-fiancé's house. I did leave a few items behind, but they were things that can easily be replaced. My priority was getting anything valuable, sentimental, or important to me. A lot of people warned me not to go alone. Don't worry, I listened. Before we headed over, my friend called her 2 brothers and asked if they'd come with us. We simply told them that I'd recently broken up with my fiancé and that things hadn't ended on the best terms, so we wanted to be careful in case he happened to be home. We had a plan. I'd go through the house and point out everything that belonged to me. Her brothers would handle carrying the heavy boxes. Meanwhile, my friend would take photos of every room and later timestamp them, just in case my ex ever tried to claim I damaged the house after moving out. Thankfully, he was at work exactly like he'd said he would be. Even so, I didn't want to stay any longer than necessary. We packed everything quickly. The guys carried the boxes out to the car while I did one final walkthrough to make sure I hadn't forgotten anything important. One suggestion from my previous post stuck in my mind. Several people recommended taking the remaining condoms so they could potentially be checked for holes. My ex normally kept them in the bedside cabinet. When I looked, they were gone. I know for a fact there had still been some left. I even checked around the room in case he'd moved them somewhere else. I couldn't find them anywhere. I'll let everyone draw their own conclusions from that. Once everything was loaded into the car, I locked the house one last time. Then I dropped my key through his letterbox. My friend actually joked about sticking her phone through the slot to take a picture proving I'd returned the key. I immediately told her not to even think about it because if she dropped her phone inside, we'd have a much bigger problem. We both ended up laughing about it. Through everything that had happened, it was honestly nice to laugh for a moment. We drove back to her place with all of my belongings. I thanked both of her brothers for helping me and promised I'd buy each of them their favorite beer as a thank you. Right now we're sitting here eating pizza, relaxing, and trying to enjoy a quiet evening. I also booked my appointment. If everything goes according to plan, by the end of this week this entire experience will finally be behind me. Thankfully, I never ran into my ex while collecting my things. He did message me afterward asking if I'd been by the house. I haven't really had much else to say. So, that's where things stand. Thank you to everyone who offered advice, support, and kindness throughout all of this. Truly meant more than you know. Thinking of breaking up with my boyfriend after a threesome. Aita? I honestly never thought I'd be the type of person to download Reddit, let alone ask strangers for advice. But here I am because I genuinely don't know if I'm overreacting or if my relationship is over. I, 24F, have been with my boyfriend Eli, 26M, for 8 years. We've lived together for 6, and until recently I would have told anyone we had a great relationship. A big part of our relationship has always been honesty and communication, especially when it came to experimenting together. Over the years, we've had a few threesomes with other women. It was always something we discussed beforehand, something we both agreed to, and something we were both genuinely comfortable with. Sometimes we'd even stay friends with the women afterward, but it was always casual. About 2 years ago, the last woman we were seeing moved out of state for work, and everything ended on good terms. Fast forward to about a month ago. Eli brought up the idea of finding another third. We talked about it like we always had and agreed that if it happened naturally, we'd be open to it. Then, about 3 weeks ago, he started showing me pictures of a guy, I'll call him Marcus, 29M. He asked if I thought Marcus was attractive. I asked why. That's when he told me he'd been thinking about inviting Marcus to join us. I'll admit that caught me completely off guard. I've never been interested in being involved with 2 men at the same time. That's just never been my thing. I don't judge people who enjoy it, but it's not something I'd ever imagined for myself. Since Eli had always identified as straight, the idea never even crossed my mind. I asked if this was some fantasy where he wanted to watch another guy with me. He said no. He explained that it would be just like our previous arrangements, except he'd be involved too. I wasn't excited about the idea, but I agreed to at least meet Marcus before making any decisions. Honestly, Marcus was a genuinely nice guy. Funny, easy to talk to, and attractive. The only thing that stood out to me was that he seemed much more interested in Eli than he was in me. I brushed it off because I figured maybe I was just being insecure. There had been times in the past where Eli felt like women paid more attention to me than him, so I didn't want to overthink it. For the next 2 weeks, the three of us hung out several times. We talked, got drinks, listened to music, and everyone seemed to get along really well. Then came last night. We were back at our apartment after having a few drinks. Music was playing, everyone was relaxed, and we were dancing around the living room. At one point, Eli pulled me close and started kissing me. A moment later, he pulled Marcus into the kiss too. First, everything felt normal enough, and I was actually enjoying myself. I'll skip over the intimate details, but eventually Eli pulled away from me and said something that sounded like, "My turn." Before I could even understand what he meant, it became obvious that the focus had completely shifted and it wasn't about me anymore. I completely froze. The two of them were so caught up with each other that they didn't even seem to notice I'd quietly gotten out of bed. I grabbed some clothes and went into the bathroom. I stayed in the shower for almost an hour. Even with music playing, I could still hear them from the bedroom, and I ended up turning my speaker up twice just to drown everything out. When I finally came back out, the apartment was quiet. I walked into the bedroom. They were both asleep. In my bed. There wasn't even enough room left for me. No one had checked on me. No one had asked where I'd gone. No one even seemed to realize I'd been gone for nearly an hour. So I grabbed a blanket and slept on the couch. This morning, around 8 a.m., I went back into the bedroom to grab some things. Instead of acknowledging what had happened, they were together again like nothing was unusual. I didn't say a word. I grabbed what I needed and walked back into the living room. A little while later, they actually asked if I could DoorDash breakfast because they'd worked up an appetite. I honestly couldn't believe what I was hearing. Now I'm sitting here feeling completely blindsided. Eli is acting like everything is perfectly normal. Two of them even carpool to the gym together. Meanwhile, I feel hurt, excluded, and like I somehow became the third wheel in my own relationship. I talked to two close friends about everything. One is a pansexual woman. The other is a gay man. As I was explaining what happened, they asked me exactly when I got the ick. I told them the truth. It happened when I realized my boyfriend was attracted to men and had never told me. Immediately, they accused me of being homophobic. They said he was simply expressing who he is and that I was judging him. I was honestly on the verge of tears because that isn't how I feel at all. If Eli had told me beforehand that he was bisexual, or even questioning, I honestly think we could have had a real conversation about it. That's not what's hurting me. What hurts is that I walked into this situation completely unaware of what was actually happening. I wasn't prepared. I wasn't informed. And after everything happened, both of them acted like I didn't even exist. Now I'm wondering if I'm somehow the problem. Am I actually being homophobic? Am I overreacting? Or would I be the asshole if I ended an 8-year relationship over the way all of this unfolded? Thinking of breaking up with my boyfriend after a threesome. First, I just want to thank everyone who took the time to comment on my original post. I spent hours reading through your replies, and one thing kept coming up over and over again. The issue wasn't that Eli was attracted to men. The issue was that he had lied to me and completely blindsided me. After pacing around my apartment for what felt like forever, I realized I couldn't keep sitting there wondering. I needed answers. So when Eli got home, I asked him one simple question. How long have you known you were attracted to men? The look on his face answered me before he even spoke. Apparently, he's known for about 3 years. He admitted he'd been questioning his sexuality for a long time, but he never told me because he was afraid I'd leave him. Then he said that when Marcus came into the picture, he finally felt comfortable enough to explore that part of himself. I asked him the question that had been eating away at me. Why didn't you just talk to me first? His answer honestly left me speechless. He said he thought slowly introducing Marcus into our lives would be easier than having an uncomfortable conversation. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. For 8 years, we've always talked through everything together. But somehow, he thought secretly building a relationship with someone else and revealing it during a threesome was the better option. The more he talked, the worse everything became. So I asked another question. Did anything happen between you and Marcus before that night? First, he said no. Then I asked again. That's when he admitted the truth. Yes, they had kissed before. More than once. And they had already been intimate. Apparently, they'd spent about 6 months getting emotionally close before anything physical happened. Then, for the last 3 months, they'd been secretly seeing each other. That means this had been going on for 9 months. 9 months. I was still trying to process everything when his phone suddenly rang. Wanna guess who it was? Marcus. Of course it was. What shocked me even more was that Eli didn't hesitate to answer the call. He interrupted our conversation to talk to him. The first thing I heard Marcus ask was, "Is she still upset?" Still upset? At that point, I wasn't just upset anymore. I was furious. Every part of me wanted to completely lose it. But then, something inside me just switched off. I suddenly felt calm. And one thought kept repeating in my head. Why am I giving these two so much energy when they clearly don't care how I feel? Neither of them seemed to understand why I was hurt. And the truth is, I wasn't hurt because Eli was attracted to men. I was hurt because he'd been having an affair. He had built an entirely separate relationship behind my back. Then he invited me into it without ever telling me the truth. Looking back, it feels like I unknowingly watched my own boyfriend cheat on me right in front of my eyes. I finally told Eli that when he finished his phone call, he needed to pack a bag. I calmly asked him to stay somewhere else for a while. Before I could even finish speaking, he said he'd already figured out where this conversation was headed. He'd already planned to stay with Marcus. I didn't argue. I didn't yell. I just stood there in silence while he packed a bag and walked out the door. For the last 2 days, I've mostly felt numb. Sometimes I'm angry. Sometimes I'm heartbroken. Mostly, I'm just exhausted. I also showed my original Reddit post to the 2 friends I talked to earlier, the pansexual woman and the gay man. After reading everything and seeing the comments for themselves, they both apologized for calling me homophobic. I apologized too if I'd said anything that came across the wrong way. It honestly meant a lot to have them there because I was in a really dark place. As for Eli, I honestly don't know what happens next. 8 years is a long time to walk away from. Part of me still loves him. Part of me is incredibly angry. But a much bigger part of me is simply worn out. I know a lot of people will probably suggest counseling. I've tried counseling before and it just isn't for me. It's also expensive. But after everything that's happened, I think I've finally accepted something. This relationship is over. Eli believes we can somehow work through this and transition into a polyamorous relationship. I can't. And I won't. What I know for certain is that I deserve honesty. Right now, that's the one thing I don't think I can forgive. It wasn't one lie. It wasn't one betrayal. It was months of deception while I believed our relationship was happy, healthy, and built on trust. Turns out I was the only one living in that reality. So thank you to everyone who took the time to comment. Your advice helped me see what I couldn't see on my own. Final update: broke up with my boyfriend after a threesome. Well, this will most likely be my final update. The short version is this. We're done. Our relationship is officially over, and honestly, I feel more at peace than I have in weeks. Eli and I sat down and had one last conversation. To be honest, it wasn't nearly as dramatic as I expected. We both cried. He apologized. He even paid next month's rent before leaving. I think deep down we both already knew how this was going to end. There wasn't really anything left to fight for. He told me he'd be coming by this weekend to pick up the rest of his belongings. The only things he wanted were his personal items, the air fryer, and the recliner. I told him that was fine. No arguments. No negotiating. Just done. As for me, I'm already looking for someone to take over his part of the lease. I'm only considering close friends because I'd rather live with someone I already trust. Other than that, that's really it. At some point, I realized I wasn't looking for more answers anymore. I didn't have any questions left. I just wanted it to be over. I wanted my life back. And now I finally feel like I can start living for myself again. I also wanted to thank everyone who took the time to comment on my previous posts. Reading your advice helped me see things much more clearly than I could when I was in the middle of everything. And for everyone who kept asking, yes, I already got tested. Everything came back clear and I'm healthy, so that's one less thing to worry about. A little final update. All of Eli's things are officially gone and he's completely moved out. The lease has been transferred to one of my closest girlfriends, so I won't be living alone after all. We're now completely no contact. Eli and Marcus have officially made their relationship official. Honestly, I wish them the best. I don't hate either of them anymore. I just know I deserve better than a relationship built on lies. 8 years of my life ended because someone chose lies over honesty. It still hurts, but for the first time in weeks, I finally feel free. And honestly, I think that's the beginning of something better. Thanks again to everyone who took the time to comment and offer advice. It genuinely helped me through one of the hardest moments of my life. My 26F friend accused me of stealing her boyfriend, except he had no idea they were dating. Throwaway account, and I've changed everyone's names for privacy. I honestly don't even know where to begin because this entire situation still feels unreal. I, 26F, have been friends with Carly, 26F, since middle school. We drifted apart after I moved out of state for law school, but our parents stayed close. Last year I moved back home after graduating, and not long after I met Matt, 25M. Matt and I clicked almost immediately. We're both working toward careers in law, so we had a lot in common. Between studying and work, we took everything incredibly slowly. We dated for months before finally making things official. Once we became an official couple, I invited him to my younger sister's 21st birthday party at my parents' house. That party ended up turning my life upside down. Matt and I had only been there about an hour when Carly arrived with her parents. I hadn't seen her in quite a while, so I was genuinely excited. I'd been meaning to reconnect ever since moving back, but life kept getting in the way. Then something unexpected happened. The moment Carly spotted us, she rushed over and wrapped Matt in a huge hug. She laughed and asked him what he was doing there. I just stood there, completely confused. Turned out they worked in the same office building. Matt was friends with several of Carly's coworkers, and they'd all gone out together in group settings a few times. I thought it was a funny coincidence. So I smiled and said, "Oh, Carly, this is my boyfriend, Matt." The second those words left my mouth, her entire expression changed. She looked absolutely furious. She barely spoke another word to me for the rest of the party. I had no idea why. The next morning, I texted her asking if I'd done something wrong. Instead of answering, she completely exploded. She accused me of stealing her boyfriend. Not long after, several mutual friends from high school started messaging me, saying I was a terrible friend and asking how I could do that to Carly. I felt like I'd skipped several chapters of a book. So I drove to Matt's place and asked him directly what was going on. I honestly thought maybe I'd misunderstood our relationship somehow. But the second I mentioned Carly, he looked completely lost. After I explained everything she told me, he became even more confused. According to Matt, he and Carly had never dated. Not even close. They were friendly at work. Sometimes they'd all grab drinks after work with coworkers. That was it. He never mentioned her before because to him she was simply another friend from work. A week passed. The messages kept coming. No matter how many times I explained that Matt and Carly had never been in a relationship, nobody wanted to hear it. Even my parents heard about the drama because Carly's parents had started telling people their version of events. I honestly didn't know what to do anymore. I trusted Matt completely. I just didn't understand what Carly thought had happened. Small edit. A few people asked about the friends messaging me. They're all mutual friends that Carly and I have known since high school. As far as I know, none of them have ever even met Matt. Interestingly, none of Matt's coworkers who also know Carly have contacted me at all. I also spoke to Carly and we agreed to meet in person. Well, I finally got my answers. And no, Matt wasn't secretly cheating. He and Carly were never dating. We met at a coffee shop in our hometown. She clearly didn't want to be there, but after the week I'd had, I honestly didn't care. I asked her to explain everything from the beginning. She told me she met Matt last year, shortly before I moved back to the state. A mutual coworker invited him out for drinks after work, and that's where they met. According to Carly, she thought he was really cute, so she started flirting with him. Here's something important about Matt. He's absolutely terrible at recognizing flirting. Seriously. Took weeks of me flirting with him before he finally realized I liked him enough to ask me out. Ironically, he's an extremely outgoing and charismatic guy. He's just completely oblivious when people flirt with him. Anyway, I asked Carly exactly how much time they'd actually spent together. The answer? Almost none. They had never gone on a date. Never kissed. Never slept together. Neither had ever been to the other's apartment. The only time they'd been alone was occasionally walking to a nearby coffee shop during lunch. I even looked through Carly's phone. The only messages between them were inside a shared group chat. There wasn't a single private conversation. So I finally asked the obvious question. Why did you think he was your boyfriend? She answered. And I'm quoting her directly. Okay, so we're not officially boyfriend and girlfriend yet, but I was sure he was going to ask me really soon. He's always smiling at me and making jokes. I knew he was going to ask me out. Just the two of us. That's when everything clicked. She hadn't been describing a relationship. She'd been describing a fantasy. I gently told her, Carly, that's not Matt flirting with you. That's just who he is. He's friendly with everyone. Then I explained that Matt and I had actually been seeing each other for quite a while. We'd simply taken things slowly because we were both busy with work and law school. As I talked, I could literally watch her fantasy fall apart. I asked her to do one thing. Please tell our parents and our mutual friends the truth. Mostly so my parents could stop dealing with the rumors. She looked embarrassed and quietly muttered, Yeah, fine. I told her I hoped we could all move on from the misunderstanding. Then I left. On my way to Matt's apartment, I called him and explained everything. He couldn't believe it. When I got there, he showed me a text he'd just sent Carly. Hey, Carly. I'm sorry if I ever gave you the wrong impression. Please know that I've only ever been friendly toward you. I see you as a friend and nothing more. I hope we can still be friends once everything settles down, but if you're not comfortable with that, I completely understand. I wish you all the best. She never replied. At least not yet. Hopefully she'll tell everyone the truth. As for me, I'm done with the drama. I'm choosing to focus on my relationship with Matt and surviving law school instead. My boyfriend accused me of cheating because our baby doesn't look like either of us. But there's one family secret he refused to believe. I never imagined the happiest moment of my life would turn into the worst 5 days I've ever experienced. I'm 26, my boyfriend is 29, and we've been together for 3 years. We had always dreamed about starting a family together. When I found out I was pregnant, we were both overjoyed. We talked about names, decorated the nursery, and even planned to get married next year. Everything felt perfect. Or at least I thought it was. For some background, both of us are white. We both have pale skin, blue eyes, and light brown or blonde hair. Looking at us, nobody would expect anything different. But there's something unusual in my family history. My great-great-grandfather was black. Over the generations, some of his features have randomly shown up in different relatives. A few of my aunts, uncles, and cousins have darker skin, tightly curled hair, and facial features that clearly reflect that side of our family. I don't have any of those traits myself, and neither does my mom. You honestly wouldn't know just by looking at us. My boyfriend knew all of this. He's met those relatives and has seen those features himself. Then our daughter was born. She arrived 5 days ago healthy and beautiful, but she looked nothing like either of us. She has much darker skin than both of us and a head full of tight, curly hair. I thought she was absolutely adorable. My boyfriend had a completely different reaction. The moment he saw her, he accused me of cheating. He insisted there was no possible way she could be his daughter. I was completely blindsided. I've never given him a reason to doubt me. I've never been unfaithful, not once. I reminded him about my family, pointed out my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, people he'd actually met who inherited those same features. He refused to listen. According to him, our daughter looked too black for genetics alone to explain it. The argument escalated quickly. Instead of staying with me and our newborn daughter, he stormed out of the hospital. About an hour later, I received a text message. He said our relationship was over. The next day, when I came home from the hospital, he was gone. Most of his belongings had already been moved out. I spent the next 3 days trying to call and text him, desperate to get him to talk to me. Nothing. Finally, he responded. His message was short and direct. He demanded a paternity test. He said he wanted proof that I had been telling the truth, and if I refused, I'd never see him again. I've never felt so devastated. This isn't the man I've known for the past 3 years. He's always been kind, calm, and rational. This version of him feels like a complete stranger. Honestly, if he had simply sat down with me and calmly asked for a paternity test from the beginning, I probably would have been hurt, but I could have understood why he was confused. Our daughter doesn't resemble him at all. Instead, he accused me of lying, ended our relationship, walked out on me and our newborn, and disappeared for days. Even if the test proves he's the father, which I know it will, I honestly don't know if our relationship can survive everything that's happened. Now I'm stuck wondering what to do. Should I agree to the paternity test and hope we can somehow repair the damage? Or should I accept that this relationship is already over and focus on raising my daughter on my own? I've decided to go ahead with the paternity test. I'll update everyone once the results come back. I'm still deeply hurt by everything that's happened, but after thinking about it, I can at least understand why he reacted the way he did, even if I don't agree with how he handled it. Update: 5 days later, the DNA results are finally back. First, I want to thank everyone who commented on my original post. A lot of you helped me calm down enough to see my boyfriend's perspective. I was still hurt, but because of your advice, I decided to go through with the paternity test. Well, the results are in. As expected, she's his daughter. The entire process leading up to it was honestly heartbreaking. I scheduled the appointment with the doctor and texted my boyfriend the time and location. He never replied. But he showed up. From the moment he arrived until the moment he left, he didn't say a single word to me. Not one. He also refused to touch our daughter or even look at her. As soon as they collected his DNA sample, he immediately walked out. The doctor actually asked him to stay because there were a few things they needed to explain to both of us, but he ignored them and left anyway. The second he was gone, I completely broke down. Thankfully, the doctor was incredibly kind. He never judged me or suggested I'd done anything wrong. Instead, he calmly explained how the testing process worked and also mentioned something I didn't know. Apparently, many babies are born with darker skin than the shade they'll eventually have as they grow. That conversation helped me more than he probably realized. As for my daughter, she handled everything like a little champion. She barely even fussed when they drew her blood. Yesterday, I finally got the results. I texted my boyfriend and told him they were ready. Then I asked if he'd like to come over so we could open them together. For almost 30 minutes. Nothing. Finally, he replied. He said yes. Either he'd already been on his way or he wasn't staying very far away because about 15 minutes later he was standing at my door. We opened the envelope together. Test confirmed exactly what I'd been saying all along. He is her father. The moment he read it, all the color drained from his face. Then he completely fell apart. He started crying so hard that I actually had to shush him because he was getting so loud. And that's when I finally learned why he'd reacted the way he did. In my previous post, I'd mentioned that he's an only child with much older parents. His father passed away a few years ago, and his mother lives alone a few hours away. I'd only met her a handful of times. She always seemed a little snobbish, but otherwise polite enough. I had absolutely no idea. She couldn't stand me. Apparently, she disliked me from the very beginning. When my boyfriend called her 8 months ago to tell her I was pregnant, she started crying. He never told me that. As the pregnancy went on, she kept filling his head with negativity. She insisted the baby probably wasn't his. According to her, I wasn't good enough for their family. She even claimed that people from poorer backgrounds were more likely to cheat because of how they were raised. I honestly couldn't believe what I was hearing. Instead of talking to me about any of this, my boyfriend kept every single one of those conversations to himself. Month after month, those doubts kept growing. Then our daughter was born with darker skin. To him, that was the final piece of proof that his mother had been right all along. He convinced himself I had betrayed him. After he finished explaining everything, neither of us spoke for a while. Eventually, he quietly asked if he could hold our daughter. I was still incredibly angry. But she's his daughter too. So I walked over to her crib, picked her up, and placed her in his arms. The moment he held her, he started crying all over again. She got startled by his crying and immediately started crying too. So there they were, father and daughter sitting together, both crying at the same time. Eventually, he calmed down. He handed her back to me. Then he asked if he could come home. That caught me completely off guard. I honestly wasn't expecting him to ask that so soon. I told him exactly how I felt. I explained how disrespectful and immature his actions had been. How badly he'd shattered my trust. How he'd spent months listening to his mother's poisonous assumptions without ever talking to me. How he disappeared for 3 days without telling me where he was or even if he was okay. And now he expected to simply move back in as though none of that had happened? I told him that if he truly wanted even the smallest chance of repairing our relationship, things had to change immediately. First, we would start couples therapy as soon as possible. Second, unless there was a genuine emergency, he would answer my calls and messages from now on. Third, he would not be moving back into the house yet. And finally, he needed to set firm boundaries with his mother. Until she apologized to me in person, she would not be meeting our daughter. Without hesitation, he agreed to every condition. For the first time since all of this began, he sincerely apologized for everything. I still don't know if I'll ever fully forgive him. But before all of this happened, we had an amazing relationship. I'm hoping that, with a lot of work, we can eventually find our way back to that. He also admitted he'd been staying in a hostel the entire time. Thankfully, it wasn't too expensive, so he'll continue staying there while we work through everything. As for our daughter, she's doing great, especially considering how much stress I've been under these past several days. Her hair has started falling out, but the doctor assured me that's completely normal. Apparently, many babies lose most, or even all, of the hair they're born with before new hair grows in. I'm secretly hoping her new hair comes in blonde. I think she'd look even more adorable. Finally, I just want to thank everyone who took the time to comment on my first post. Even my own mom thinks I'm completely crazy for trying to make this relationship work. Maybe she's right. But I believe it's worth trying. Not just for us, but for our daughter too.